Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for November 11th, 2024. Today is Veterans Day, and I send a salute to our veterans with the pledge that if we can do our job, never again will American soldiers have to go fight wars on behalf of greedy corporate cartels, and we can have the peace that this nation and all nations so richly deserve. We have an opportunity following the election last week to move into a new security architecture in which all nations can be secure that their basic interests will be met and that we can take the chaos in the world today and end it through cooperation and economic development. So let me give you a quick review of some of the events. There's a lot going on. Starting with the U.S. election. Now, we've covered this some and we've discussed it a lot, but let me just go through what I consider to be the key points. The first most important thing is that the election was about economics. That's the real issue. Just as the economy is driving the war policy, that is an attempt to defeat all alternative economic systems and keep the world safe for the imperial power of London and Wall Street, what's known as the unipolar order or the so-called rules-based order. That's driven by the economic crisis, which has resulted from the last 50 years of a move away from physical economic development into increasingly outrageous monetary schemes, speculation, the whole derivatives market, the too-big-to-fail operations, and so on. All of this was cooked up by bankers and what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex to make the world safe for global corporations that will operate over and above the power of governments and use military force, weaponization of the economy for the sake of protecting their privilege. Now, how does this affect the U.S. election situation? Well, the main issue was economics. The Democrats tried to make it woke politics. They tried to make it the argument that Trump was a fascist, the new Hitler, a misogynist, a racist, that the people who support him are racist, or as Biden said, garbage. But to call people names when their concern is with covering the costs of feeding their family, clothing their family, housing their family, providing medical care, school and education. To say that because they reject the policies of Biden and Harris makes them racists is the kind of arrogant elitism which drove people to support Donald Trump in the first place. So it's the arrogance of the Democrats and the failure of the Harris campaign to break from Biden's policies. Remember, she was asked what she would do differently, and she said, I can't think of a thing I would do differently. Well, how about stopping the genocide in Palestine, which the U.S. is now complicit in? How about stopping the war in Ukraine, which has put us at times close to the brink of thermonuclear war? How about stopping the destruction of poor countries through war and through International Monetary Fund austerity, which drives flows of refugees into the United States and into Western Europe? Couldn't she have thought of that as something to change? Well, not only are the Democrats clueless and trying to put the blame on the American people, but they're going to try to obstruct the effort if Donald Trump does follow through with his pledge to end the Ukraine war and end these senseless wars which cost money, which kill huge numbers of people, and which create instability everywhere. They're going to try to obstruct that. Now, one positive step was that Trump announced, as one of his first announcements, that he would not have Mike Pompeo nor Nikki Haley in his cabinet. So far, so good. There are a whole bunch of other people running around that we're going to be looking into to make sure they don't end up in a Trump cabinet so they can obstruct the desires of the American people for a world peace and economic development of sovereign states. That means we have to watch out for the Democrats, the oligarchs in the Democratic Party, and we also have to watch out for the Bush Rhino networks in the Republican Party. The old Bush networks may give up on Ukraine, but they're itching for a war with Iran and China, and that is not in the interests of the United States. Now, the second major event in the last week was the collapse of the German government. We've been reporting this for quite a while, and I'm here in Germany and I've been watching it up close. The coalition government can't possibly succeed, and it collapsed last Wednesday. It's responsible for support for the craziness of the European Union system, which includes the Green New Deal, which includes an economic policy which benefits the banks and the speculators, but not the producers. And they've committed themselves to being a front end of the blunt force that's deployed against Russia through arming Ukraine. Is there hope for the German government? Well, it's likely that Scholz will have a no confidence vote. There may be elections as early as March. Unfortunately, the leading alternative party, the Christian Democrats under Friedrich Merz is a BlackRock guy. He wants more weapons to Ukraine. So the fight in Germany is going to have to continue. But it's going to be a good fight because there are forces here that are itching to break away from the Anglo-American geopolitics and bring Europe into an alliance with Eurasia. Now that brings me to the other major development of the recent weeks. The BRICS conference in Kazan, Russia, the Valdai Club meeting addressed by Putin, where what's being put forward is precisely the kind of collaborative economic policies of the extension, for example, of the Belt and Road Initiative through Eurasia, through Central Asia, through Africa, in which the Chinese are committed with their partners to developing the colonial sector of the world, which previously, for the last 500 years, has been a source of loot, raw material loot, and cheap labor for the global cartels. Now, the events that took place are part of an ongoing organizing project, which Putin has discussed as his Eurasia perspective. That is to break with British geopolitics, which says you have to separate the world into competing blocs, and in particular, keep Central and Western Europe away from East Europe and Eurasia. Well, what Putin and Xi Jinping have done is form an alliance, an economic alliance, which is based on the idea of cooperation, and not a cooperation of one bloc against another bloc, but cooperation which includes the possibility of the Western countries participating. Now, of course, the West can't participate in its present state because it would try to impose again a unipolar order, which is unacceptable. But why do we have to do that? There are potentially large markets all over the world. There are raw materials that need to be shared all over the world. There should be a means by which the U.S. gives up its arrogant sense of being the sole superpower, which is the remnant of the immediate post-Cold War period. The U.S. and Europe can cooperate with the BRICS, and Putin made that very clear in his statements, that he's not trying to set up a competing bloc, but one which could be part of a collaboration with partners. Now, on December 7th and 8th, the Schiller Institute will be holding a conference to discuss precisely how to carry out this transformation. The world is still on the edge of more war, more chaos, financial blowouts. And the period immediately ahead is going to be a rough period, and it's going to require your participation as thoughtful, critical adult thinkers, acting as citizen statesmen to bring about a peaceful transition from a collapsing order that goes back 500 years, but especially to the post-World War II period, the post-Cold War period, the era of the sole superpower. Well, that era is over. the people who ran that era are not ready to give up and will plunge the world into chaos if we're not prepared to mobilize the institutions of the West to break with this new Cold War, to break with this neocon, neoliberal agenda. So that's why I would urge you to keep your eye on the schillerinstitute.com website for the invitation that will be coming out for the December 7th and 8th event. Help us organize for that. Become part of the American system that is committed to the idea not of exploitation and control, but of cooperation. So thanks for listening today. Share this update. Share all our materials. Let's make the American population fully fluent in a discussion, a language of peace and cooperation among all sovereign nations.